Yes. Hello. Good morning. Good morning or good day to all participants of HELiX ASEAN Forum. I hope you are all well and has a good internet connection. I am Desrina from the AHA Center. I am currently joining live from Jakarta. And thank you for attending today's focus session on map-based apps for disaster management, initiatives from Indonesia and the Philippines, which will be hosted and facilitated by our partners, Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team for the Asia and Pacific Hub. We have, I believe, Mr. Mikko Tamura, bring the whole gang, bring the whole crew, along with Ms. Sen Roxas and Mr. Hari Mahardika, Mr. Adityo Dwijananto, and Ms. Dewi Sulistioningrum, who will be joining us a bit later. Allow me to give you a brief information before we start. This event is a series of 2 days focus sessions of Humanitarian and Emergency Logistic Innovation Expo, or what we call it HELiX. And please acknowledge that due to the setting of this event, we may experience some issues with the internet connection or any other glitch. And before we start, allow me to quickly share my screen on the house rule for a bit. Would love to hear some confirmation if my screen is indeed showed up. Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, a quick one on the format of renaming with your name and your organization. I'm taking an example of mine, Desrina, from the AHA Center, and then just a quick reminder for everyone to be mindful, turn off the microphone unless you are called or having the willingness to express your comments or questions to all participants and our speakers. And of course, we encourage you to drop comments, questions, and feel free to do that in the chat box, which will be addressed throughout the discussion and also at the end of presentation. And be sure to be very concise to give other participants also space and time to participate. All right, and a quick one. A heads up, later on we'll be having a quick virtual photo or screenshot that we're hoping everyone will be able. We encourage everyone to turn on their video feature, the camera, at the end of the session. Alrighty, so to all the participants, enjoy the session, and we are hoping this will be a community of practice platform for all of us to discuss and share with regard to this particular theme. Without further ado, I think I'm going to give the microphone to Mr. Mikko Tamura and the crew, the team. The floor is yours. Over to you, Mr. Mikko.
Hello, good day to everyone, and thank you for attending our session on map-based apps for disaster management. These would be stories and initiatives from the Indonesia and the Philippines. So I'll just share my screen first. Kindly confirm if you're able to see my screen. Yes?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we start, we would really want to get to know more about the participants attending this session. maybe you could drop your country where you are right now in the chat box so that we'll be able to see. And then yeah, can everyone try chatting? Okay, just so we know that the chat feature is working. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Nusrat. Thank you, Sen. Denver. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. A lot from the Philippines. Oh, hello from India and Turkey. Okay. Yeah. So let's start. So this session would be talking about four major things. First is OSM or OpenStreetMap and disaster management. We'll be going through the INAware and PhilAware project done in Indonesia and the Philippines. We'll be doing a demonstration on some map-based apps that you may use later on after this session. And I'll be introducing the Open Mapping Hub Asia Pacific. So I'll be doing the first discussion on OpenStreetMap and disaster management, providing a quick introduction, a background about the context, things like that. So I'd like to put an emphasis especially on the importance of maps, especially in the case of disaster management. So why maps are very important in DM is because first, we are able to actually identify the entry points and humanitarian logistics. So if there's a disaster, we can immediately find which airports are open that we can use. We could identify which ports are in the ground and probably provide the supply and the support that we need, especially in the disaster. Secondly, maps are important because this can facilitate immediate and fast rescue and response. So if the maps are available, we are able to identify the location of roads, how to get there, and locate where the location of the families or the or the affected individuals are located. Maps can also be used through using damage assessments. So in the case of Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, there were several maps being used in order for NGOs to identify and national government agencies to identify the extent of the damage caused by the typhoon. Fourthly, this can also be used in identifying the supply chain and managing the supply chain. Where are goods coming from? Where are they being delivered? Where are they being supplied? And things like that. Recovery and rehabilitation uses maps in order for them to better or improve on development and facilitate the rehabilitation of the community that has been affected. It's like you're going, like, is it a good idea to put a shelter, a new school or a new hospital in this area? Would that be allowing them to be more resilient? Things like that. Development planning would be allowing the communities to grow and have that access to that information, those maps, in order for them to scientifically and allow them to develop and expand their communities. And lastly, this is very, very very initial, especially in the face of the DRRM, would be the risk and exposure assessment. So if you have data of where your floods are happening, where your landslide prone areas are happening, then pretty much you would know which communities or families or individuals would be high at risk or highly exposed from these hazards. So before I proceed, I'd just like to ask and look at the screen and maybe put in on the chat which map for you is more useful, like in your everyday life or in your at work, being a disaster management practitioner, as an LGU individual, things like that. Which one do you think would be more apropos to being used? So A would be the left side and B would be the right side. Kindly put your answers at the chat. I'll be waiting. Let's see your answers. A. Anyone else? A. Yeah, okay. As a responder, as a disaster responder, Which do you think would be a more helpful map for you to discern or use? Okay, so since most of you answered A, I will leave that to you later on. But pretty much, as you could see, as a first responder or as a researcher, a student, someone who works for an NGO, someone works for the government, for the local community, a more detailed map actually provides us more information on how we're going to work on the situation. So if a disaster happens, hopefully not, we would know where our assets are. We would know which routes connect those assets, and we would know which areas are would be most affected by these disasters. So yes, correct. If I were to be a map reader or even just a local individual, I would be using A as a more detailed map compared to B. Okay, so this is where I would want to introduce you to OpenStreetMap. So OpenStreetMap, or OSM for most mappers, is a collaborative project to create a free editable world map. So I put an emphasis on collaborative, free, and editable because pretty much it sums up everything that is actually needed in that context. So first point is that anyone can add to the map. So this map is totally editable. So anyone that has access to internet can create an account and add the information that they want on the map. Second is that it can be improved with local knowledge. So the more information that we have on the map from local knowledge, the more detailed the map becomes and the more useful it can be used later on. And lastly, since we're putting in data to OpenStreetMap, pretty much the concept of OpenStreetMap comes from the word open. So anyone can actually use the data for any purpose. Just as long, this is the disclaimer, just as long as the data or just as long as you attribute it to OpenStreetMap as it is protected by the Open Database License. So you need to really attribute OSM when you use the data. So if you just want to use the data for a t-shirt design, a cake design, or doing any map for your leisure, you could totally use OSM, download the data, and put it on the map and things like that. I would like to go through with the data levels. So as you can see, this image shows you 4 levels of how maps are being done or how map data is being generated. So at level 0, as you could see, this map shows you pretty much the roads or the road network. Sorry, or the road network in an area. So for example, in several towns or communities in Southeast Asia specifically, there are still a lot of communities that have this type of level 0 mapping. So it's just the roads that you could see on the base map. Okay. For level 1, this is where you see your buildings and roads. So you could see these buildings actually or ideally represent a family or a location where an individual is living. So pretty much if you see a level 1 data on a community or a map, you'll be able to see the roads and the building footprints in that area. So you have an estimation of how your population is distributed, how your families are spread out through your community. So instead of just looking at the map and seeing that there are roads there, you put in a pretty much a human element to it. Okay. So level 2, or the third, this one is pretty much putting up the village names, city names, neighborhood names in a map component because as we know as responders or our disaster management practitioners, location is very important, especially in reporting what we see on the ground. So for example, we are able to put here the names of our communities, the names of the cities, so that when we say that a malaria outbreak is happening in community A, it's not just, the map reader wouldn't be seeing it as just community A or the city itself, or not knowing where exactly it is. So it gives you a more deeper understanding of the situation. For level 3, you add now your critical facilities such as schools, clinics, water points, bridges, tunnels, airports, because these are pretty much very critical, especially in responding, in providing support, and knowing where your critical lifelines are. With this idea, we are able to move forward and see public health campaigns, advocacies, and pretty much strategize the locations of our assets. Lastly, at level 4, this is pretty much microdata on every service and building. So this allows users or various users to access good navigation and detailed information on how to strategize their response. So for example, here you'll be able to see the capacity of the clinic, their service hours, and their contact information. So ideally, what we want, especially in the map data, or for us to reach that point, would be to get to level 4, so that the data is very granular, very specific, very useful for others. So next, I'd like to emphasize on the map data cycle. So usually, in my experience as a mapper and facilitating mapping projects, is that when you work on a mapping project, you actually collect data, you put in you find the location of your buildings, your schools, etc. And then you put it somewhere. And eventually, from that, in that database or that internal database, you then use that data to create the maps and provide that data or those maps to your communities. Ideally, this map data or maps that are being generated will be used by other departments or sectors or NGOs for them to plan or to think about more activities or projects for that community, since the data is there. So then usually what happens is that when the mapping project happens, the data is stored somewhere, or we provide the data to the community, like we give it in a CD or a USB, or we upload it somewhere in a drive, and then some way, somehow, the data gets lost, ideally. The data becomes like when a new mapping personnel or a GIS individual or a MERL consultant comes in, pretty much the data somehow gets lost in the process. But through OpenStreetMap, this becomes this allows the project or the mapping to be more sustainable. So pretty much when mapping communities input the data, so this mapping communities involve enthusiasts, advocate groups, INGOs, NGOs, government, organized mapping groups, or corporate mapping, or corporations, businesses, local communities, put that data somewhere, such as, for example, this OpenStreetMap that I'm talking about. It gets stored there, and uploading the data in that open, collaborative, accessible repository. Like, think about OSM as a geodatabase, wherein when you put in the data, you'll be able, it's stored somewhere. So when the data is in OSM, it becomes usable into various other tools. You are able to generate interactive maps. You are able to use the data for mobile applications, for apps. You can also provide paper maps for communities, which if they don't have access to the internet. So this would be allowing them to better plan and provide better action and have a better impact for the communities. So through OSM, I just like to live to the point that through OSM or OpenStreetMap, there is first collaboration through data. Second, the data is accessible to everyone. So it promotes collaboration. Like NGO 1 uploads the data, and then, okay, NGO 2 might need the data later on. It's at least in the OpenStreetMap. So it's very accessible. Ideally as well, the community, if they have access to the internet, can actually access that data as well, which doesn't go through various lengths of emailing, letters, and whatnot. So if this is being promoted, more opportunities is being given to the data that we are being able to generate, thus making the data more sustainable for use, for updating, and for more appreciation later on. So before I proceed to our next presenter, I'd just like to introduce the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. So HOT is a US NGO and an international team. So by combining the concept of OpenStreetMap, open source tools, and local knowledge, we support mapping communities worldwide and create and provide data in maps to improve humanitarian action, disaster response, and development. So we are really, truly promoting the use of OpenStreetMap because we see it as a way of making the map data more accessible for everyone. Yes. Thank you for that. Would be for my part. I would like to call on Harry for the HotPDC INAware map. Off to you,
Thank you,
Harry.
Mikko. Okay, thank you, Mikko. And hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. My name is Hari Mahardika. I'm from Indonesia OpenStreetMap Association, collaborate with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. And in today's session, I will share about one of our project called HotPDC INAware mapping. Next. Next slide, please. Mikko? Yep. So what is INAware mapping project? So this is a joint program between HOT Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team in Indonesia with the Indonesia National Disaster Management Agency, or we call it PNPB, and the Pacific Disaster Center, or we call it PDC, to support disaster management tools and data for Indonesia. And this program is funded by United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. So the goal of this project is to complete and provide spatial open data for the public. So the data can be used for any disaster management sector, including the NPB and the local disaster management agency through INAware, the disaster management monitoring platform that created by the PDC. And also we aim to developing capacity of the local government and community in disaster management mapping related to the data collection. Next. So where the mapping location? So this mapping activity was carried out for almost 2 years. So we conduct the mapping activity from 2016 into 2018 in 3 major cities in Indonesia: Surabaya, Jakarta, and Semarang. So the mapping activity was executed by Indonesia Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team with support from the local government, such as the city government and also the Regional Disaster Management Agency, or we call BPBD, in those cities. Next. So when we were doing our mapping activity, we carried out our mapping principles. So Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team and OSM Indonesia Association, it's always carry this kind of principle when we conduct a mapping in our project. So the first one is we always trying to support instead of control. So meaning that the people who contribute on directly to conduct the mapping activity itself is not coming from HOT. Instead, the people who are doing the mapping activity, it's coming from the local government and the local community. So HOT act as a supporter instead of really the center of the main activity itself. And the second principle, we try to always engaging of the community and the people who involved in our mapping area, instead of we demand them to collect what we are want to collect. So for example, before we starting the mapping activity, we always held a discussion with the local government, what kind of object or critical infrastructure that they think it's really valuable to be collected and put it on the map, because some of the area can have a different priority. So we always open for discussion, and we do not really decided what kind of infrastructure that we want to collect in each area. So the last one, we also want to sharing the output, the result of our mapping activity. Instead, we keep it by ourselves. So any result of our mapping activity always be open and can be accessed by the public. And those kind of example for this principle will be sharing on the later slides. So next. So in general, there are 4 steps on our mapping activity. The first one, of course, we held before we starting the mapping, we always conduct the initial meeting with the local or related government. So for example, like I said, we always discuss about what kind of critical infrastructure and what kind of information that they want to be mapped. They need to be available for them to can doing a better disaster management system in their area. And the second aspect, we also asking for their permit letter. This is also one of the important steps, because when we doing a mapping on the field, we one of the challenges is sometimes the people it's not really trust with the surveyor. So by having like official permit letter from the local government, it will be more easier for our team to conduct the mapping field. And the second one, this is also the important. We try to building a community everywhere we conduct the mapping project. So, for example, in this in our project, we like I said, we always hire and train local people about how to use OSM and put all the data on the map. So instead using staff from the in Indonesia, in Jakarta, instead we try to find a local community and who really interest to collaborate with us, and we hire and train them to becoming the main center, front gate of this activity. And the second one, we also contact the local university for each city. So in Jakarta, we collaborate with University of Indonesia, and in Semarang, we collaborate with the Semarang State University, and in Surabaya, we collaborate with the 10 November Technology Institute of Technology. And with them, we also created the local mapathon. The mapathon itself, it's like a remote mapping, the event that the people who doing remote mapping together to collect the building and the road in the specific area. Like Mikko already mentioned about the remote mapping to collect the road and building. And the third step is to create the mapping strategies and methodology, because this is also important to make sure that we can accomplish to map the whole area in the span of, for example, 6 months or less than a year. So we created the mapping team that only consists of 2 people, and we also having a regular team evaluation just to make sure whenever the team made a mistake, and we evaluate and make sure it's not going to happen in the future, and also discuss with the whole team. And the third, it's using the mobile technology approach, because right now there is a lot of mapping apps that available in our smartphone. So we choose some of them and we use them in our activity in this project. And maybe some of the tools will be demonstrated in our session for today's session as well. And last but not least, we prepare for the mapping tools, such as the survey map. This is also important, and make sure the satellite imagery it's updated when we try to map through remote mapping. So in satellite imagery, we got the support from the USAID, and we also preparing for the mapping editor. So all the data that collected in the field will be uploaded into OSM through this editor. Next. This is some animation. So our team start from the office, the data entry, ride the motorcycle, bring the permit letter and server map from the local government, and they stop in the village office, and they really collected all the critical infrastructure based on our discussion with the local government through a motorcycle, and they going back to the office and input the data. So yes, we can see from the start, because we see the video, the animation through the middle at first. So this is the start. We starting from the office. We stop its village office to meet the village representative, asking permission and update the boundary administrative in the village level. And after that, we mapping for the whole village for the critical infrastructure using the data collect and OpenMapKit apps to collect the information, and our team is back to the office to input the data using our mapping editor and upload to the OpenStreetMap. And the next step, we make sure the quality is good, checking by the quality assurance, giving to the mapping supervisor to be reviewed. And after all the data review and the mapping will be created, the map, and will be giving back to the village representative. So that's the general process of our mapping activity. Next. Yeah, from 2016 until 2018, we have mapped almost 15 million building, and also we around like a 50,000 critical infrastructure have been mapped in these three cities where the almost 50 million people lives in Surabaya, Jakarta, and Semarang. So as you may see in the slides, there is the progress of the mapping activity in each city. So this is our process, and this is achieved not by the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, but again, the front of this activity is from the local community and the local government itself. So this is the animation. Next. Next, Mikko. Yep. And where the data goes to, and the main idea, like I said in the very beginning, is to help the local government and the national government of disaster management agency. So the data, after uploaded into OSM, also will be integrated into the INAware system. So the INAware system, the data will be becoming one of the layers in the INAware and can be accessed by the disaster management agency. So it can be overlay with the other layers such as the risk layer or hazard layer or any other exposure layer that available also in the INAware. So this aim to, for example, this hope that, for example, if there is a high risk of flood in certain areas, so we can see how many buildings on how many schools that potentially will be affected if there is a flood happen in that area, something like that. And other than the INAware system, the data also used by the local government to directly by creating the map, the printed map. So the thematic map, for example, we created the disaster map for Bukit Duri village in Tebet. So based on our mapping field result, so we created the thematic map. Also, we create the village map where the village office in those every village in those cities that we have mapped in Jakarta, Surabaya, and Semarang. If you go to their office, there is still a possibility that you can see our map hanging on the wall of the village office in those three cities. So that's also, we use the data both online and also offline, because we also aware that not many people will be also using those data digitally, but some of them also still prefer to use them offline by print the map and hanging on the wall, something like that. So yeah, next. Like I said, the mapping activity has finished in 2018, but we also want to make sure the result of the project or the mapping that we created can inspire other community and or maybe other organization in Indonesia to replicate or maybe to having a potential collaboration in the future. So we created several media to make sure, or activity to make sure this mapping activity is not end in 2018. Therefore, we have several training, follow-up training with the BNPB regarding how to use the OSM data and INAware into the disaster management system. And one of the activity have been uploaded into YouTube. So you also can see our activity in that video, and it's also have been paired with the English subtitle. So you can also see that using the English subtitle. And we also created the website page where the people can download the data in each city in Surabaya, Jakarta, and Semarang. And the data that can download, it's also the data that available in INAware. So we want to make sure not only local disaster management agency who got the benefit, but whole people. So that's why we put in our website page so people can download data based on a specific type, such as schools, health facilities, economic sector, and etc. And next, we also created a sustainment document plan with the BNPB because we want to make sure the general idea, general process of they use the data of OSM into their activity. It's an INAware. It can be understood by the whole BNPB staff. So we created the sustainment plan both in Bahasa Indonesia and also in English. And along with them, we also created the training materials that uploaded both in our internal training website, HotOSM training website, and also integrated with the PDC, Pacific Disaster Center training website. So those training material are expected to can support and help the other staff to learn more about our mapping methodology and how to use the data from this activity properly. Next, Mikko, I think that's all from our experience, from Indonesia experience, but because this is a collaboration between Indonesia and Philippines, I think my colleague from Philippines, Sen, will be also deliver their activity regarding the FillAware. Over to you, Sen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Harry. Good day, everyone. I'm Sen Roxas, and I'm the training manager of Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team here in the Philippines. So, as you can see, there's a similarity in what Harry just presented, the INAware project, and this time it's the FillAware project. So the FillAware project is, next slide, please. Sorry. Okay. So the FillAware project was launched in July 2019 together with the National Disaster Preparedness Baseline Assessment as a two-pronged, all-encompassing disaster risk reduction initiative efforts and the collaboration between Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, PDC, NDRRMC, or the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, and of course, the Office of Civil Defense, funded by USAID. So, under the FillAware project, Hot Philippines was tasked with filling in the gaps in the critical geospatial data, particularly in mapping critical lifeline infrastructures critical to disaster preparedness and response. So, next slide, please. Since the FillAware project is essentially a replicate of INAware, we use the same tools and methodology. So I wouldn't discuss that in length anymore, except that we had to adjust it to be more applicable to mapping in the time of COVID-19. So we used the entirety of 2020 to do the FillAware project. So if the INAware had the time to build communities in person, and we know now that nothing beats face-to-face interaction, FillAware had to pivot and engage online communities instead. So we started by setting up mapping projects in the Hot Tasking Manager. So later on, there will be a demonstration of that. It's a platform that allows mappers to map a certain area at the same time without their edits overlapping. So using that, we organized online mapathons and introductory OpenStreetMap sessions, all done via teleconferencing. So Google Meet, Zoom, you name it. We sort of exhausted all platforms during 2020. And I'm sure that you share the same experience with me. Likewise, we had to go through hiring and training staff as remotely as possible to ensure everybody's safety. Coordinating with the local government unit, the municipalities and the cities that we are working with was also extra hard, because activities like this, like mapping activities like this, is just not in the top priorities of the LGUs, and understandably so, because we have a pandemic going on. That's why one difference with INAware is that it was so important for us to have a local coordinator in place who built the pipeline of LGUs who already agreed to engage with us before the field team, myself included, can be deployed. And of course, we also had to comply to LGU requirements of testing for COVID-19, securing travel passes, doing quarantines, wearing personal protective equipment, among others. So we finally, after complying all of that, we finally start the field mapping process by training a small group of LGU staff on how to map using OpenStreetMap and how to use field data collection tools. Essentially, during this training, we prepare and equip the staff the necessary know-how so they can be partnered with our field staff. Once the training is done, actual field data collection activities commence and usually last between 3 to 10 days, depending on the size of the municipality. And during this time as well, we keep an open line of communication with the LGU. This is very essential because they are the ones who know the landscape better. So that includes going around closed off areas due to rising COVID cases or active COVID cases. So our field plans were constantly changing because of the volatile situation on the ground, and we had to roll with it. So with these changes in how we approach the project, doing the project and doing the mapping activities in the time of COVID-19, we face the following challenges. Next slide, please. So, of course, everybody had to pick up for some time how we all tried to figure out how to go about with our lives when the pandemic started. So definitely there were delays in starting the field collection activities. It was also a challenge that field staff have to work throughout the pandemic. There were also issue of availability and willingness to participate of local government units. As I said earlier, so like for one of our project sites, Quezon City, so we were originally we originally planned to conduct field mapping activities for Quezon City as well, but that proved to be very risky and impossible to do without the help of the LGU. However, we cannot force their hand because we know that they are also swamped with their COVID response. So in effect, as I will show you later on, we chose to remote map more cities in Metro Manila instead. So we only conducted field mapping activities in Pampanga. So that's in central Luzon, here in the Philippines. So, however, even with these challenges, we overcame it using the following strategies and approaches. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah, as I was, there were also instances that there were floodings and typhoons. So I think you saw in the previous slide that we were mapping during flooded times in one of the LGUs. So it was challenging and fun, and at the same time. So we adapted as moving on. We adapted by engaging online communities instead. We also had a local coordinator establish relationships. It was very important to have persistent follow-ups with local government units concerned. We definitely had to work with a limited number of people during field mapping to minimize exposure. And of course, we had to put in place a COVID-19 health protocol to ensure the safety of our staff and the people that we work with. And having protocols like this and safety and security policies, we constantly referred to it throughout the project. Next slide, please. So despite all that, despite all the challenges and the opportunities to overcome them, we have accomplished mapping the following. So these are the total number of buildings created during the field, the remote and the field mapping activities for their respective areas. So Pampanga, Quezon City, Marikina City, San Mateo, and Rodriguez Rizal, and Pasig. So we are 100% validated for Pampanga, Quezon City, and Marikina and San Mateo and Rodriguez Rizal. And currently, as of yesterday, we are at 71% validated. So the FillAware project is currently ongoing. So there's still changes coming in. There are things being finalized. And we hope that we'll be able to share that with you when we close the project as well. But for now, next slide, please. The existing data that we have, the OpenStreetMap data that we collected from the FillAware field mapping activities, they have also benefited other mapping efforts. So in the data model of FillAware project, we collected health facilities and institutional facilities, so including them. So the mapping efforts of MapBex, from the health facilities, they got the HIV testing facilities data set so that they can use it in their advocacy as well of mapping HIV testing facilities in the country. The OSM or Mapa-Aralan, OS Mapa-Aralan campaign, which aims to map all public schools in the Philippines, also benefited from the data that we collected from the FillAware field mapping activities. So as you can see, as Mikko and Harry said earlier, the data that is in OpenStreetMap, once you put it there, it's for everyone to share and everybody can benefit from it. So that's my part, and thank you. So now we will take questions, I think, in the chat. So Mikko?
Hi, Sen. So what we're going to do is we're going to proceed with the demonstration. For everyone, kindly just drop your questions in the chat, and Harry and Sen and me will be more than happy to answer it in the chat. Thank you. So let's just proceed. Let's just open another question and answer portion after the presentation so that we could manage time. Thank you again. So next, may I call on Dewi for the hot tasking manager. Dewi, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, Mikko. Thank you.
Yes. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mikko. Good day, everyone. Let me share my screen. Sorry, Mikko, I will. Yeah, thank you. Good day, everyone. My name is Dewi. Currently, I'm head of operation in Indonesia Association, OpenStreetMap Indonesian Association, or we call it POI. So I'm really excited. Today, I will share about the tasking manager in the demonstrate. So the tasking manager is a tools that create especially for the collaboration and participatory mapping that is really helpful for us to finish our project both in INAware and PhilAware project. So we create the mapping project into the tasking manager, and possible to multiple people can work on together that digitize the building and roads, and also in the same area and the same time without the overlapping edit because the tasking manager will be divided into the separate grids, and one of the user can log on the one grids. Okay, I will show you about the tasking manager working on that. Okay, this is the link of the tasking manager, the task.hotosm.org. And before that, the tasking manager show about the mapping progress. So if the user of any user adding data into the OpenStreetMap, this is also will be adding in the number of the building maps and total maps edits and total mappers, and show about the mappers online. That's currently we have like the more than 50% to do digitize in the tasking manager. So the tasking manager also can use for the humanitarian action for the disaster response or emergency response, and we can help save or improve live because we can adding the building and roads into the maps. So this is the steps in the tasking manager that you can helping to contribute. The first is mapping. If you are the new mapper, the first contribution for the tasking manager, you can choose the mapping. So the volunteer use the satellite imagery from the OpenStreetMap to trace the building, roads, and waterway and other feature. And the next is validation steps. This is for the experienced user that regularly using the OpenStreetMap. So the experienced volunteer will be check the map data to ensure the high quality. And after that, they will be uploading to OpenStreetMap for the public. And a humanitarian organization can use the data to plan for the disaster response and other life for the saving activities, or we can use the data for the better planning, like for the evacuation building, evacuation roads, or maybe for the distribution or logistic to the impacted the area. Yep. So we can make the difference by contribution in the tasking manager. Okay, and the next, this is the, if you want to more detail about the tasking manager, you can click on the learn menu. This is describe about how we can using the tasking manager in the user manual and step by step, and also provide the video can easy for us to understand and learn about the tasking manager. Okay, the next is the step how we can contribute in the tasking manager. The first is you have to have the OpenStreetMap account. If you doesn't have, you can sign up in here and click next. Please make sure you input the activate email, because it will be directly click on the activation link on your email. Okay, I will click login with the OpenStreetMap account. Okay, click grant access for authorize, and yeah, it will be show up about our profile in here. You can complete your profile in the settings and personal information, and this is also you can use for the OpenStreetMap details for the OpenStreetMap account, like join in 9 years ago with the total change set, and set up about the expert mode if you want to make advanced and experimental feature available in your tasking manager, and choose your interest that will be impacted with the project that you can choose in the tasking manager. Okay. After that, I want to show about how we can start to digitize into the tasking manager as the mapper. We click explore project. And this is will be show about the current project that active in the tasking manager that we can help to digitize or validation the data to make the high quality or the quantity the data for the OpenStreetMap. If you click the show map in here, that will be show about the maps and the number of tasks, the number of projects that have been created into the tasking manager. Yeah. So this got several projects in the world that already use the tasking manager for help the digitize and validation the data into the OpenStreetMap. Okay, so you can use this function for the filter to project that you want to find it to contribute. Okay, I will choose one of these. We can choose the mapping, the unmapped in province Nepal. This is for the COVID-19 case in the Nepal. So the tasking manager also can help to digitize for the COVID response in the world. Yeah, that will be show about the COVID-19 in the Nepal, in the province too, and also the organization that will be create this, Kathmandu Living Labs. And if we scroll and see in the bottom, we can see about the question, term and permission, and history about the project that will be easy for you to understand about this project. This is a list of the contributor that already map and validate into the tasking into this project. And if you activate the expert mode, you can see about the download IOI and the download task grids in here. Okay, let's start to contribute. And we'll be show about the information, the task, about the project and instruction in here that we have to read this because we want to understand about the project. The project is for the mapping for the building and roads and waterway using the Maxar and Bing that already embed in the OpenStreetMap editor in here. Yeah, and this is for the map view overview. We can see about the grids that the easy for the mapper for choose one of the grids, and you can lock the grid so everyone cannot digitize in the some area. Okay, this is a legend of the box. Like if you want to contribute contribute as the mapper that will be digitized like the building and the roads, and you are like the new mapper, you can click on the box or grids like the white color in here. For the blue, it's for the validator that the experienced user OpenStreetMap to help to increase like high quality the data for resolve the warning and errors in the OpenStreetMap data. Okay, I want to choose the white color, and this is we can choose the ID editor and click map selected task. Okay, after the few minutes, it will be pair like the ID editor for the digitize the building and the roads in here. Please ensure you have to zoom in until you find the detail about the building and the roads in the satellite imagery. Yeah. We already using the Maxar. If you forget to what's the type of digitation or what the satellite imagery, please click in instruction and it will be show about this information about the project. Yeah. Okay. After we find about the this is like the shape of building, we can click on the area for adding the building. Yeah, like this, and click on and please click square like the perfect shape of the polygon. And don't forget to adding the text like the building for information, basic information of the object. So don't worry if you not known about this area, you can adding like the building and road like the basic information to help digitize in the tasking manager project. Yeah, I will add this more about it and click, and we can save it. Okay, after that, if you want to choose another imagery, you can click in here, background setting. Yeah, this is for the different available the imagery that we can select it to our project that make it better to visualize and digitize the building and the roads and the other feature in here. Okay, I still choose the Maxar because it's better. Okay. For the roads, we can use the line in here. And okay, I will get example in here. Yeah, we can adding the roads and choose the type of roads, like example, the residential and more. If you finish to add some building and roads and another feature, you can save, and we can leave it because it's the change-set command that really helpful to calculate the statistic of the project. And we can click upload, and the data directly to uploading to OpenStreetMap that it will be going to public, and everyone can see it what your edit and add into the OpenStreetMap. Okay. And we can back to completion because it's not finished yet. I click no, but if you already finished all of the building and roads, it's already mapped into the grids, you can click yes. I forget one thing is please ensure you not edit in offset purple line because it's indicate for the grid of tasks that you have to finish it. So you just edit and update the data inside the purple line. Okay. Now and submit task. It will be directly to the the projects, and yeah, it's enable. You can choose again one of grids that you want to adding into the OpenStreetMap. Okay, and the tasking manager also can show about the statistic of the number of the building in its projects. Okay, wait first. Yeah, you can scroll up, scroll down, and more statistic in here. Click on more statistic, and it will be very detailed about the project that already mapping like the more than 200,000 buildings map in here, and the roads map, and the change set, and the total number of the contributor of the tasking manager in this project, and user by level, like the beginner, intermediate, and advanced. That this is the history from your OpenStreetMap account. Okay, and the others, it's the time statistic to be finished and complete by the user for this project. Yep, I think that's all for me in the little bit. Thank you everyone for your attention. And I will offer to Adityo to how we can download the OSM data that the result of the mapping project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewi, for the session. Hello, everyone. My name is Adityo, and today I'm going to give a little bit explanation regarding how we can download the OSM data using export tool. So previously, you might already know how to contribute in OSM using the tasking manager, and maybe you start wondering how to download OSM data. And in that case, we can use the export tool. So the export tool is the open service that used to download the latest OSM data that give user the freedom to choose the data they will download in certain area. With the export tools, you can download the data up to date OSM data according to your need in various files. And to start with the export tools, you need to use your OSM account to sign up, and then you put your email for the first time, and then after that you open your email to get confirmation email from the export tools, and then you're ready to go to use the export. And I'm going to start give some demo about how to use the export tool. To start using the export tool, you can go to the Create tab located in the upper side of the screen. And after that, you can see there's a 4th step in this export project. The first one is related to description of your export project. First, you need to put your export name. For example, in this example, I'm going to trying to extract all education facilities in Jakarta. So my export name is education Jakarta, and then the description, of course.
Adityo,
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off a bit. We received some feedbacks, and also I personally experienced myself that your voice is not very clear. To adjust the microphone. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
I think it's perfect for me, and then we're hoping the other participants also can hear you better. Thanks, Mas Adityo. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I hope it's more clear. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience for the technical problem. So yeah, let me start off again. So this is the export tool, which is the open tools that you developed by Hot. The purpose is to create customized extract up-to-date OSM data in various file format. So you might wondering that you already contribute to the OpenStreetMap using the tasking manager, and then you start wondering how to get the OSM data, and then the export tool is it's your solution. So to use the export tool, you need to use your OSM account first. So if you don't have OSM account, you can start creating it, and after that you can log in the export tool. And after that, you can put your email, because these tools need a confirmation email, and then you need to open your email and confirm the email from the export tools. So after you confirm your email from the export tool, all you need to do is you can start to create the export. So to start create the export in this website, you can click this create export page. And then you're going to direct it to the new page, which is we have a 4-step here. The first one is we need to give some description about our project export, because you need to know what kind of your export that you are going to create it. For in this example, I'm going to use, for example, I'm going to export education facilities in Jakarta, and also I'm going to give some description regarding my export. It's all educational facilities in Jakarta. And if your export related to your some project, you can put this your project name. Otherwise, you can ignore it. And on the right panel of this site, you can see there's a global map, and there's a search box, and there's a 4 tools. So this is you need to define area of interest, your export area. So to do this, you can start by typing your area in this search box. For example, I type Jakarta here, and I click on the result, and it will go directed, it will navigate it to Jakarta, and you will see a blue box, and which is your area of interest. And if you're not happy with this area of interest, you can press X button and start using another tools provided on the right panel. So for example, this is a box button, so we can generate a box here. And also there's a freehand button, so we can create some area of interest by drawing based on our interest. Or you can download the area, you can create the area of interest based on your map view extent. For example, in this area, I zoom into some place in Jakarta, and then I create, I'm clicking this view button, and it will create a area of interest based on our my previous view extent. Or if you have some administration boundary that you that you have in GeoJSON format, you can use import feature. So keep in mind, you need to have a GeoJSON file in geographic coordinate, which is WGS84, which is would have 5 megabyte maximum. For example, I'm using this Jakarta boundary, and then after that we can click next, and this is the format file that we are going to download. As you can see here, there's a lot of file that we can select, and because I want to open into my JS software, for example QGIS, then I need to download it package and save file. And then after that, I click next. And the third tab, this is related to all the OSM categories that are already available in OSM. So as you can see here, there's a lot of categories that we can select, from building, commercial, communication, education, emergency, power, public, sport, transportation, water, and language. And if you wonder what kind of type of the tag that we can download it, you can hover your mouse in some categories. For example, in building, we will download name, building, house number, street, and building material. And since my example, I will download all educational facility, then I'm going to check these education categories. As you can see here, this will download all kindergarten, school, college, and university. So after that, we can click next. And the last step, it's related to all this, the summary of your export. As you can see here, there's by default, by default, the hot export is allow us to publish this export to public, meaning everyone can download your export job. But if you don't want to make your export job public, then you can disable this feature. So if you disable this feature, all your export job will only visible for you. So I enabled this, and then I create export. And after that, I will wait until the export ready. So because previously you need to put your email for the export, if your export ready, you will get notification from hot export. For example, like this. So this is automated email from the hot export, and then you can click on the link to download your file. So this is example of my export job that I already created previously. As you can see here, there's two files because previously I want to download in geo package and save file. So there's a two file, and then we can try to download each file, and then you can try to open it into your JS software, for example, in QGIS. So I'm going to show what is looks like in the QGIS, the export data. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is the export data result for Jakarta because I only want to download educational facilities. Then the export will generate all the educational facility, whether it's in point or polygon. Then after that, this data, we can use it for our analysis. So I think that's all from my side. So for the next step, you're going to see how to contribute using the MapSwipe, and it will be presented by Sen. Okay, over to you, Sen.
Okay. Thank you, Adityo. Hi again. So right now, I will introduce you to MapSwipe, which is a game. So MapSwipe is available to download on the App Store. You can get it on Google Play, or you can also directly download it as an APK file. So MapSwipe, you do it in 3 steps. Step 1 is you complete task by swiping through satellite imagery of areas that need mapping. Step 2 is the data that you contributed is used by Missing Maps to map vulnerable areas in more detail. And step 3 is that the maps help organizations coordinate humanitarian efforts and save lives. So some of the organizations that use the data that come from playing MapSwipe is Doctors Without Borders, the different Red Cross and Red Crescent movements. All right, so now let me share the game with you. Okay, so as you can see my my screen, and MapSwipe, even both in Android and Apple, they work the same. So let's open the application. So I have already completed the registration process. That's why this is my home menu already. The registration, you only need an active email address and you have to set up a password, and that's it. You can start swiping. You don't need an OSM account to be able to play MapSwipe. So as you can see, you can choose between various projects in here. So let's try to contribute to the forecast-based financing in Sudan. So let's click on that. And in all projects, you can choose to go through the tutorial first or the map now. So let's go through tutorial. So here, there's a quick instructions on the basic steps. If there is nothing relevant in the image, simply swipe to the next screen. Okay, so we will do this. Okay, let's swipe. As seen earlier in the various demonstrations, what you see in the satellite images might be a bit disorienting if you're not used to looking at it, from a satellite perspective, the satellite view, but that's okay. The more that you play it, the more that you map, and the more that you map, you get trained to better understand what your eyes see. Okay, so here there are some buildings in this image. So we have to tap once to mark the squares with green with buildings. Yeah. So you tap once and it becomes green there and there because there are buildings there. Okay. So that's the correct answer. So there are many buildings here. So tap all the squares which contain buildings. So tap once for green. There. Okay. If you're not sure if that is a building, you can tap twice and it will appear yellow. There. And if there's no building in the image, no need to tap, just swipe to the next screen. Again, there are no buildings, so just swipe. Okay, if the clouds are blocking the view, then we have to mark the areas with the clouds red. So tap thrice to turn it into red. There. And then once you're done, swipe again. So mark all tiles red by tapping 3 times if the satellite imagery is broken. So it's all bad imagery, so just swipe down to mark all tiles red. And so don't worry if you're unsure about what you see in a square, because every image is viewed by multiple people. So don't worry if you missed something. There are mappers and validators who will still look at it. You can also press and hold any square to zoom it, and you can tap again to dismiss it. Okay, so you're ready to start map swiping. That's it for the missing maps MapSwipe application.
Thank you very much, Sen. So, let's proceed. So I think we're going to overshoot a bit, a few minutes from our target time. So thank you again, Sen. So this tool, the MapSwipe tool, is very helpful, especially if you want to identify immediate areas in your in your interest area, wherein you wanted to know which parts of that blank map has settlements or has buildings in it. So yeah, So let me just share my screen for the last portion of this presentation. So with everything that we've shared, the apps, the projects, the initiatives, I'd like to introduce to you the Open Mapping Hub. So the Open Mapping Hub is a regional movement aiming to provide increasingly decentralized support to the OpenStreetMap movement in the region. So specifically in this case, Asia and the Pacific. This would entail to power the evolution and growth of the OpenStreetMap ecosystems in 25 countries across Asia Pacific through contextualized and appropriate support and leadership. So pretty much the Open Mapping Hub would be operating in all countries in Asia and the Pacific, but it has its priority countries for the next couple of years. This includes 25 countries spanning out from Yemen up until to Kiribati. So as you can see in the map, there are areas or countries already that has very strong and large OSM networks or OpenStreetMap mappers, but there are still countries that do not have much mappers, and we would really like to reach out to those organizations and to individuals who might be interested to help the Mapping Hub to develop, expand, and support the growth of OSM ecosystems in the countries that are highlighted in red. So currently the team has 7 members, including our regional director, Mr. Nama Budatoki from Nepal. We have our HR associate, Bea, our partnerships manager, Bri. I'm currently the community manager of the Open Mapping Hub. We have our Merle associate, Dana, communications associate, Awantika, and our regional finance manager, Melai. So the approach of the hub is basically to identify, recognize, nurture, and collaborate with key institutions, groups, and individuals working in OpenStreetMap. So we would really want to work with these groups to really promote the use of OpenStreetMap. And the effective use of OSM and the data would allow us to connect to the everyday lives of the people. So we would really want to bring the data, the technology, and the people together so that the open resource of OSM would be accessible, would be more useful for them. Lastly, to develop the hub as a regional public good for the shared benefits of the Asia and Pacific region. So the hub can help network if you need help in tapping partners in other countries within Asia and Pacific in line with OSM. So the aspirations of the hub would be to first facilitate movement building in the region. So really stacking up that network of OpenStreetMap, that support for OpenGIS tools, etc., and shift the focus on OSM community needs. So pretty much really nurturing that relationship with the OpenStreetMap community. Lastly, to follow the lead of the OSM community and dedicate all hub energy and funding towards the voices. So the hub really wants to focus on the OSM communities in various countries so that they themselves are empowered and they'll be able to assist the needs, especially in the various countries that we mentioned. So currently there are several key activities by the Open Mapping Hub in partnership and support from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, which includes microgrant support, national dialogues, communication support, partnerships with NGOs and government, trainings and capacity building sessions, and intersectional community building campaigns. So you may contact us at these email addresses. I'll just leave it here for a few seconds so that you may screenshot it or keep it. Okay. You may also reach out to us via our website at hotosm.org and email us through there. So before we proceed, we'll be opening the floor for other questions. So I'm sure that most of the questions have been already answered, but we'll be opening. We would like to hear from you if there are any questions, especially on the apps, on the INAware and PhilAware project and others. So kindly drop the questions in the chat room or kindly raise your hand if you want to open your mic. Okay, I think there's no more questions since Harry and Sen and Adityo have answered everything in the chat box. So is there any need for clarifications as well? So, okay, where will this recording be posted? This Frina, can you help us answer this question?
Yeah, sure, Mikko. With regard to the documentation and also recording, we'll get in touch through our HELiX website later on. So hopefully within the week and closer to the October hackathon, because we still have another series of event in October. So towards the months, we will be posting documentation, also materials and recording from these events we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Desrina. So lastly, we would like to open the floor as well for recommendations in behalf of your communities or organizations. Would it be okay, Desrina, let's open the mic for everyone, like allowing them to unmute themselves. Would that be fine?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do that. So the mics are allowed now to be opened. Maybe you could provide some recommendations for our team, so that about the map-based apps, etc. Okay, let's just give a few minutes. So I'll just run through some of the questions. So one interesting question that came into that got my attention, which Harry also answered, was about like the mapping being very tedious and very extensive, and how it can be done usually in the disaster response scenario. So the idea here pretty much involves as well that the mapping is ideally being done before the disaster even happens. So the efforts, especially done in the FillAware and INAware, are more of preparing for that disaster, so that when that disaster happens in the areas that have been mapped, available data, accessible data can be there for partner NGOs, for local governments, for schools, for the academe, for businesses to use, so that they can also be able to respond, and the data can also be used immediately. So in some cases, even for example, if a typhoon would be hitting an area, for example, in the Philippines, we usually conduct an activation in partnership with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. We activate, we call on volunteer mappers, students especially, to help us map the probable area that would be affected, so that at least the level 1, I mean the roads and the buildings would be available. NGOs would know where to respond, where to bring the supplies, where to bring the evacuation materials, the food supply, things like that. Okay, so I think we have questions now. In the course of the mapping, do you distinguish as to the type of building? Thank you for that question. So at the level 1, like the presentation showed to you by Dewi, we normally tag everything that we see that are buildings as buildings. But in the case of being there or knowing the type of building, it boils down to the field mapping activities. Like if there's a local mapper from OpenStreetMap or someone knows how to map OSM, pretty much that's where the information adds in, since he or she will be able to identify the type of the building. In some cases, in my experience, like when the disaster happens, that's when they actually identify it, because that's where they mobilize the volunteers, the people, to do the mapping. That's why we would really like to promote in really mapping these very vulnerable and high-risk areas, and filling up that information and building up that data base or that geospatial database, so that when the disaster happens, the data is already available there and ready. Thank you, Marilyn. Any questions? So before we conclude, may we request everyone to open their cameras so that we could have a selfie for us to remember this very nice moment. Thank you. Let's open our cameras. Can we open? Wait. Let me open. Okay, everyone's allowed to share their video. So I'll just stop the share. There. Desbrina, can you help us facilitate the screenshot?
Sure. All right, everyone is ready?
Okay, hello? There. Can you open your cameras?
Okay, I'm gonna let another second to go to wait. Perhaps another participant would like to join. Okay, let's start. I'm counting 3, 2, 1, cheers. Another one, 3, 2, 1, cheers. Thank you very much all.
Thank you.
I'm going to share, before we wrap this thing up, I'm going to share a feedback form that you can access online for the overall session. Maybe you can share your experience and some comments for this particular session. So I'll drop the link in the chat box for you to easy.
Again, thank you very much to the AHA Center, to POI, to Hot Philippines, and everyone who attended. This has been a very great opportunity for us to share what we've been doing and what we would want to do in the coming future. Thank you again. You have...
Yeah, thank you for the speakers from HOT, colleagues from HOT, and also all the participants who have been actively joining and listening. I hope the information is useful, and see you guys around. Thank you very much once again.
Please do also take this chance to
the link is posted.
All of you can raise your hand.
Thank you, Desbrina.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mikko. Thank you.